So, as usual, here's Tim's August inspiration. He made 4 tags and they've got a bit of a retro feel and use a great masking technique to create this effect. I didn't have Tim's fabulous travel stamps, but I'm going to be using these lovely sewing ones, and definitely a vintage sewing theme going on with my tags this month. So Tim created 4 tags this month, and I'm going to do the same, except I'm going to turn them into a little booklet, as you can see here. So I'm going to post the measurements on the screen. I'm using white cardstock, and I've cut the outer card, the outside of the little tag booklet, 6 inches, which is the height of the tag, by 6.5 inches, and then I'm scoring that at 3 inches and 3.5 inches. And the inner card is slightly smaller, so that's 5 7/8 of an inch high by 6 inches, and then I'm scoring it at 2 7/8 of an inch, and then again at 3 1/8 of an inch. I'm trying to make, or show you how to make 4 tags in this video. It definitely will be the edited highlights, but I'll hopefully show you the main techniques that I'm using, and obviously they're the techniques that Tim showed us how to make. So I didn't have Distress Stain, so I'm going with Distress Ink, and I'm creating a neutral background with frayed burlap, iced spruce and pumice stone. Once I'm happy that my ink background is complete, I'm just trimming the tops of the tags into shape. And then once I'd shaped my tags, I inked the edges just to give a little bit of a definition around the edge of my tag before I begin the masking and stamping technique. As I was searching for my black archival ink, I found this button stencil that I thought would be a great way to add another layer of interest to the background of my tags. So I'm just rubbing the Distress ink through the stencil onto my tags using my ink blending tool. The first thing that I'm going to do is place my main images, and I'm using a black archival ink, and I'm just stamping these sewing machines into position to start with. I'm also going to be using this little set of stitch stamps, and then I need to create a mask. Now I didn't have any of that lovely masking film that Tim used, but I'm going to be using these post-it notes, and as you can see I'm using 3 layers of post-it notes to create the 3 little masks that I need. So I stamped on one and then cut through 3 layers of post-it notes to get 3 little masks. And as I don't have any distress markers, I'm going to be using my coloured distress inks to get the coloured stamping into the background of my tag. So my masks are in position, and I'm going to be using these safety pins and some of the worn lipstick and tumble glass distress inks to add the coloured stamped images into the background. And I'm using that same masked technique on all 3 of my tags, but just using a different stamp set each time. And then I'm going to be colouring some lengths of ribbon, one in pink and one in blue. And I'm just using my distress inks and some water, and I'm just dipping the ribbon into the inks and then scrunching them to dry them, and this creates quite a nice effect, and it matches whatever colour scheme that you might have on your tag. I'm adding frills to the bottom of my tag, so this one's a lace, and I'm just using some strong double-sided tape and then ruching the lace onto the bottom of the tag. And then I'm adding a layer or a strip of the blue coloured ribbon and just tucking in the ends at the back. And using the same technique, I'm creating little skirts on my mannequins, so small strips of tape and small strips of lace and ribbon. I've made a little bow out of ribbon for the bottom of my tag, and now I'm going to make a small sash for my central mannequin. And I'm just using little bits of double-sided tape to keep the ends of the ribbon in position. And I'm going to be stitching the little button to the centre of the ribbon, and I'll put that to one side and attach it at the end when I attach all the heavier elements. I like to use pin flare or a silicone glue to put these heavier items in place on my tag and make sure that they don't fall off. And then I'm just using little bits of pearl trim to create necklaces on my dress mannequins. This really is turning out to be a girly tag. So all the little frames I'm making for my tags with the pink and blue cardstock, I'm just taking the colour off a little bit from the cardstock using my antique linen distress paints, and I'm just rubbing the paint onto the actual cardstock with my finger just to lighten them slightly, and then I'm attaching them to my tag with double-sided tape and then trimming them to fit. And I'll be doing that for each of the tags in this little booklet. And then I'm just attaching the little ribbon ties to the top of the tag, and I'm using 2 contrasting ribbons. I'm also using my distress paints to colour the top of a safety pin to make it match in with my project. So I've coloured it cream with the antique linen distress paints, and then I'm going to use that to attach a couple of pearls and a little charm at the top of my tag. And then I'm going to attach the bow in position. I couldn't really sew through all these layers, so I like to use my trusty silicone glue. It takes a little while to dry, but once it's there, it's set and it's not going to fall off. Then I'm going to stamp my quote again onto some cardstock that I've just taken the edge off with my distress paints. Make sure your distress paint is dry before you stamp on top of it. And then I'm just trimming all the letters, all the words, should I say, of the quote into strips. And I like to add the double-sided tape to the back of these little words before I chop them. I don't always remember, as you will see in this video, but it does make it a lot easier than adding little bits of tape to small strips of card. And then once the words are cut out, it's easy to attach them with the double-sided tape to your tag. And that's tag number 1 complete, ready to move on to tag number 2. Another use for my distress paints is to just lighten slightly the print on this strip of ribbon that I'll be using as a closure on my booklet. And then stamping my quote so that it's ready for the front of my tag, and I'm also going to be using a little bit of distress ink and distress paint just to highlight my dress form on the front of my tag. And then once the paint was dry, I just went back in with my fine black pen just to go over the stamped image. And just deciding where to put the little closure band around my tag, and making sure that I've got room to still decorate my main image on my tag. And then again using a strong double-sided tape. I do wish that I'd cut this just slightly longer, because once everything's embellished, I've not got a huge amount of that little overlap wrapping around and closing my tag. It does close, but I would have preferred a little bit more. And then I've decided to make a complete dress with ribbon and lace on this dress form. So I'm starting out with the skirt, and then I'm using the ribbon to form the rest of the skirt and the bodice of the little dress. And this time, as you can see, everything's pink on these front and back tags. There's the skirt finished, and then I'm using another little bit of ribbon to create the bodice. And to finish off the dress, I'm just going to nip it in at the waist with a little ribbon sash. Again, just folding in the ends of the ribbon and attaching it with double-sided tape. As you can see that I've fast forwarded a little bit, and I've added a ribbon ruffle below the bottom of my tape measure, and now I'm creating a closure that the tape measure will tuck underneath once the booklet is closed. So I'm just stitching, should I say, some buttons onto the ribbon, and then using double-sided tape to form a double layer of ribbon, and then I'm going to stitch that into position, and that's where the tape will tuck underneath. So just like a little belt loop. And then I just use a running stitch to attach the loop to the tag. And it was a bit tricky because I was stitching through double-sided tape, so I will have to give my needle a clean afterwards. And then just sticking my quote into position. This time I didn't use double-sided tape because I forgot to put it on. And then I'm framing that tag as I showed you before. This time I'm using pink, and I'm trimming it to shape and adding the distress paint to the back just to dull down that colour slightly. just using my scissors to trim the frame to the right size. So instead of a charm, this time I'm making a little ribbon rosette, or should I say a lace rosette. So I've trimmed some lace down and I'm just running a gathering stitch along the bottom of it and sewing it into position, and it just makes a little lacy rosette that I can attach to the finished tag. This stamp set comes with some cotton reel stamps, and I've decided to make some real little cotton reels, so I'm stamping them up and colouring them, cutting them out, and then I'm going to wrap coloured threads around each of the little spools. So I just interrupted my spool making to put my little quote into position. This time I remembered the double-sided tape. Next I'm wrapping up each of those little spools that I cut out earlier with some cotton thread, and I'm using double-sided tape and glue to keep the threads into position and trying to make them look as realistically wrapped as I can, and just leaving a little bit of thread for decoration purposes dangling from each of the spools. And then I'm using my distress inks just to colour each of those little spools of thread. So I've attached each of the cotton reels with some silicone glue, and then I'm just trailing their threads artistically, I hope, with a little bit of PVA glue, keeping the threads in position on the tag. And with this final larger cotton reel, I'm going to create a little heart just by holding the thread in position with PVA glue. So that's the two outside tags complete, and that's what it looks like on the inside where it's all framed up. And then I'm going to finish off the final fourth tag of the inside of the booklet. More ribbons, bows and quotes, and I found this great rickrack, velvet rickrack, that was the perfect shade to create another little bit of interest on the front of this tag. And then I stitched through each of the buttons, making a little kiss with my embroidery thread, and then attach them with silicone glue to the final tag. And again, I put the ribbon in before I framed it, so I'm just popping that back in again. I'm joining the tag together with some glue down the spine of the booklet, and I'm just sitting it slightly to the right hand side because the back of the tag itself doesn't have the embellishments on, so it doesn't need to be quite or have quite as much room. And I'm pressing down well on that centre to make sure I get a good join in the spine, but I've created a little bit more of a gap on the second tag in, so that the embellishments on the second tag won't be squashed by moving it slightly to the right hand side of the spine. And as you can see, my belt loop my belt was a little bit short, so if I were you making this, I'd just cut it a little bit more generously than I did. So here you have it, the little tag booklet inspired by Tim Holt's set of 4 August tags. And mine's a sewing theme, and I can flick through my 4 little tags in this cute little booklet. So that was a bit of a marathon tag creation session. I had great fun and I created a great big mess. So I'd like to say thank you to Tim Holtz for his August inspiration, and I hope that you've enjoyed having a look at how I got to my interpretation. I really had great fun with this sewing theme, and it's turned out into a very girly tag indeed. And I hope you like it. I hope you give tag booklet a go yourself, and definitely pop along to see Tim Holtz's 12 Tags of 2013, and if you're not playing along already, I'd recommend it. It's great fun. Look out for my September tag coming soon, and thank you for watching.